The story begins with a married couple, Saga and John. Both are incredibly excited to finally move into their new home, which is also the house where Saga's grandparents used to live. This is where Saga spent a large part of her childhood, located deep within a vast forest in Finland. Upon arriving, John is overwhelmed by the peaceful beauty of the house and the surrounding forest. However, he can't help but be surprised to see all sorts of old belongings and clutter haphazardly dumped in front of the house. Many areas have degraded and require a lot of repairs. And of course, the person taking on the majority of that work will be him. Saga then takes her husband to her old room. John pulls up the curtains and discovers a tree growing right in the middle of the room. Saga begins to reminisce about her childhood, clearly remembering where every piece of furniture used to be placed, then excitedly tells John how they will arrange the furniture later, especially the spot for the baby crib she has always dreamed of having in this house. John realizes just how thrilled his wife is about their new life, and that makes him very happy. Overjoyed, the two of them start dancing right in the middle of the old house. Afterward, they take a walk together into the forest. While walking, something suddenly catches on John's shirt, forcing him to stop and check. Saga, by this time, has walked a bit ahead. Looking around, John sees a strangely shaped tree trunk that looks exactly like a human face. That's not all. He also discovers another tree trunk shaped like a person lying flat on the ground. While John is still busy looking around, Saga comes across a tree that feels incredibly familiar to her, as if she has known it for a very long time. She steps closer, hugs the trunk, and kisses it affectionately. Not seeing his wife, John starts searching for her in the woods. Suddenly, Saga appears right in front of him, startling him. She explains that as a child, she used to come here to hide from her grandmother because she always forbade her from entering the forest and often said that this forest would always reclaim what belongs to it. Later, Saga confesses to John that she desperately wants to become a mother. The two share a romantic moment in the forest, and shortly after, Saga becomes pregnant and gives birth to a baby boy. However, right after the child is born, the doctors notice something highly unusual about the baby's body. This causes them to grow concerned. Sometime after Saga regains consciousness, John enters the room. Saga immediately asks about her son's condition. John reassures her that everything is fine and the baby is healthy. Saga wants to see her child with her own eyes, so the doctor comes to assist John in handing the baby to her. But the moment she holds her child in her arms, Saga discovers that the baby's entire body is covered in a thick layer of hair. The doctor admits that she has never seen a child with such an appearance before. However, after examination, she still affirms that the boy is perfectly healthy and has no serious medical issues. Afterward, the whole family returns home, with Saga still using crutches as her body hasn't fully recovered from childbirth. On the way back, she suddenly hears a sound coming from deep within the forest. Saga turns her head to look back but doesn't see anything. When they enter the house, the baby, who has been named Kura, starts crying uncontrollably. Guessing her baby is hungry, Saga goes into the nursery and sits down on the chair. John hands the baby to her to breastfeed. While nursing, Kura suddenly bites his mother, causing Saga pain and forcing her to look away. John reminds her that the doctor said maintaining eye contact with a newborn is very important. After placing Kura in his crib, Saga gently touches his stomach. But she notices something strange. Every time she touches Kura, the boy starts to cry intensely. At the same time, Saga herself feels pain. She completely doesn't understand what is happening. Saga tries to sing a lullaby to help her baby sleep, but Kura won't stop crying. Finally, John figures the boy doesn't want to sleep alone, so he brings the baby to bed to sleep with them. While the three of them are sleeping, Kura is suddenly able to lift his head on his own, despite having just been born. The boy stares intently at his mother, then turns to John. Because John is a deeply religious man, he considers this a miracle and remarks that the action is very fitting for the name they had intended to give their child. In the middle of the night, while John and Kura are sleeping, Saga gently removes her child's tiny hand from her body and tries to adjust her sleeping position. But Kura suddenly moves very quickly toward his mother, hugging her tightly. Ultimately, Saga's arm starts bleeding from a wound caused by the child. The next day, Saga's mother and older sister Taru come over to help the couple take care of the baby. Saga happily gives them a tour of the new house, but her mother immediately notices her daughter is pushing herself too hard. While she is still in the postpartum period, Taru encourages Saga, telling her that they are here precisely to help her care for the child. Saga then takes them to Kura's room. Taru is incredibly impressed with how Saga decorated the room, as she has poured so much dedication and care into every detail. Just then, John enters the room with Kura in his arms. The boy is still crying uncontrollably. Taru assumes the baby might be hungry and asks Saga if she has fed him yet. Saga insists that Kura has just eaten. Saga's mother then asks why the couple decided to live in such a desolate place. John explains that they want their son to grow up close to nature. Suddenly, Kura reaches out, grabs her mother's earring, and pulls it so hard that it tears her earlobe. Everyone immediately panics, but Saga's mother tries to hide her fear and asks for the first aid kit. A while later, Saga walks in and sees her mother stitching up the wound herself. Her mother says it is highly abnormal for a baby of that size to possess such tremendous strength. She begins to suspect that something is wrong with Kura. However, Saga's mother also reveals that when Saga was first born, she had similar strength, which makes everyone feel even more weirded out. The next day, some relatives and friends of Saga and John come to the house to celebrate the baby. Saga happily welcomes everyone and introduces Kura to them. However, the baby practically won't stop crying. A little girl among the guests can't hide her strange look when she sees Kura. Saga immediately notices that expression. When they walk further away, she hears the little girl ask her mother why the baby looks so strange. The mother quickly tells her daughter to be quiet. After being alone with Kura, Saga starts observing every reaction of the guests and recalling the things they said. Although no one directly says anything insulting about her child, Saga begins to imagine that everyone is silently judging and criticizing Kura. She tries to comfort her baby once again. Just then, a gust of wind blows in from deep within the forest, and something bizarre happens. As soon as that gust of wind appears, Kura instantly stops crying. John then walks over to pick Kura up to introduce him to everyone and officially announce his name. But while John is speaking, Saga again hears the strange sound emanating from the forest. Just as John is about to announce the child's name, Saga suddenly interrupts him and calls the baby by a different name, Kura, stating that this is the child's true name. Everyone claps in celebration, but Kura begins to cry fiercely. Saga immediately spots a red mark on her child's arm, so she picks the baby up and takes him to a private room, away from the guests. Upon entering the nursery, Saga closely inspects Kura's arm and discovers that the wound has become more severe. She decides to see the guests off early, saying she doesn't feel well. Her mother reminds Saga not to forget to take care of herself. Afterward, everyone hugs and says their goodbyes. When Saga closes the door, she asks John if he is mad at her. John replies that he thinks the new name is very beautiful, but an important decision like changing their child's name should have been agreed upon by both of them. If only one person makes the decision alone, its significance is no longer whole. Saga gets angry and says it seems like nothing she does ever satisfies John. She feels he is always correcting her, always instructing and ordering her to do this or that. However, eventually, Saga still apologizes for changing the baby's name on her own without discussing it with her husband. Afterward, John comforts Saga, telling her that she is a wonderful mother. Nevertheless, Saga remains firmly convinced that something very strange is happening with Kura. Sometime later, Saga takes her son for a walk in the forest, and Taru tags along with the two of them. Finally, they stop at an area in the woods, and Kura manages to fall asleep after having been awake for almost the entire night. When the boy wakes up, Taru sees the expression on his face and says it looks like Kura is smiling. Right after that, Kura starts crying again. Just then, the two hear a strange noise echoing from deep in the forest, sounding like tree trunks moving or rubbing against one another. But as soon as that sound rings out, Kura instantly stops crying. This makes Saga and Taru feel even more unsettled. Upon returning home, John and Taru begin clearing the messy pile of belongings stacked in front of the door. While cleaning, Taru suddenly remembers something their grandmother once said. She recounts that before passing away, their grandmother had called Taru over and told her that the things placed in front of the house served to ward off them. Hearing this, John asks if she was referring to the neighbors, but Taru implies that their grandmother was actually talking about something completely different. She doesn't explain exactly what that is, only adding that their grandmother used to insist that cold iron could fend them off. However, Taru also mentions that their grandmother often said a lot of bizarre things, as if she lived in an entirely different world. When evening comes, Saga sits on the bed in the bedroom. John notices a rather large bulge appearing on her back, so he approaches and places his hand on her shoulder. At that moment, Saga realizes the baby is sleeping. She is incredibly surprised because ever since he was born, Kura has almost never been able to sleep at night. John reassures her and tells her to enjoy this rare, peaceful moment. But when Saga looks toward the bed, she discovers Kura sitting up. John says that it's normal for a baby to sit up like that. However, just a few seconds later, Kura begins to cry again. Saga apologizes to John, suggesting he probably needs rest, and she will take care of the baby herself. She takes Kura to another room and sits beside him, waiting for him to fall asleep. Suddenly, her phone rings. Saga is startled, realizing she had fallen asleep without knowing it. Looking back at the bed, she finds the baby has disappeared. Panicking, Saga starts searching all over the room. Finally, she spots Kura lying on the floor, completely baffled as to how a newborn could get out of bed on his own. After that, Saga answers her mother's call. While talking, she keeps a constant watch on Kura. The boy is sitting next to a flower that has grown through the floorboards and the rug. Saga takes this opportunity to ask her mother about the things her grandmother used to say regarding the forest. She remembers that her grandmother always warned her not to step foot in there and often said there was something extremely dangerous in the woods. Saga's mother replies that it was just one of the stories her grandmother used to tell. According to her, this forest hides a bizarre secret. Saga doesn't pay much attention to that explanation, but shifts to inspecting the flower growing out of the floor. She begins to observe the damaged wood around it, then breaks off some more pieces to widen the gap. As she digs deeper, Saga sees tree roots weaving beneath the ground, with many insects swarming around them. Suddenly, one of the roots moves as if it were alive, wraps tightly around Saga's arm, and yanks her forcefully toward the gap in the floor. The next morning, John wakes Saga up. Startled, she realizes she is lying on the floor right next to the hole. Saga explains that there seems to be something lurking beneath the ground, right where the flower grew. John also finds it strange that a plant could grow in that spot. But when he checks the clock, he realizes he is late for work. Saga tells John to go ahead to work. She will manage, and everything will be fine. Later, unable to bear the pain every time she breastfeeds, Saga decides to pump milk into a bottle for Kura to drink. But Kura suddenly kicks the glass bottle hard, making it fall to the floor and shatter. Saga sets the baby down and starts picking up the shards of glass. Unfortunately, her hand gets cut, and blood begins to drip onto the floor. While trying to pull a shard of glass stuck in her hand out, Saga suddenly sees a sight that leaves her dead in her tracks. Kura is sitting on the floor, licking his mother's blood which had dripped onto the plate below. The sight is so abnormal that Saga decides to take her child to see a pediatrician. After the checkup, the doctor confirms the baby's health is still fine. However, Kura has an extremely high level of sensitivity to light and touch. The boy's body is also much larger than newborns of the same age, while his muscles are visibly developed and refined. Saga tells the doctor that her son even drank her own blood. The doctor suggests that the baby might just be too hungry and is putting whatever is in front of him into his mouth. The doctor then explains to Saga how to recognize when a baby is truly hungry and asks if she is under any psychological stress. John gently intervenes, suggesting the problem might lie in how Saga is perceiving and reacting to her son. The doctor explains that it is entirely possible for a mother to sometimes experience difficult or negative emotions toward her newborn. She suggests scheduling another appointment to better support Saga. John seems quite pleased, thinking this could be a way to help his wife. On the way back home, it starts to rain. John says that finally things seem to be fine, but Saga coldly states that she will never breastfeed her child again. John tries to be sympathetic, saying that this is also part of the process of her learning to adapt to the role of a mother. Saga instantly gets angry and demands that he not talk about her feelings right now. Just then, a car pulls up. John tells Saga that it's his family. Saga walks into the house where Christian and John's mother are already waiting. They greet the baby, then greet Saga. Christian gives Saga an iron object he crafted himself as a gift. Saga thanks him for the special gift. Christian then asks John to bring the baby over so he can bless the child. John's mother is immediately drawn to Kura's bizarre appearance. She jokes that it is lucky trolls are afraid of holy water. Otherwise, they might have come and taken the baby away. Christian begins praying to bless Kura. After finishing the prayer, Christian takes holy water, sprinkles it on the baby's head, and blesses him. After that, John's mother starts talking about the days she used to take care of John when he was little. But Kura's fierce crying suddenly interrupts the conversation. When they enter the living room, Christian is holding the child in his arms. He hastily says that he didn't do anything. John quickly snatches Kura from his father's arms and notices a red mark appearing on the child's arm. He immediately asks his father what he did to his son. Christian holds up the piece of iron and explains that it is completely cold, not hot, and there is no fire around. Furious with his father, John hugs his child and walks away. After John leaves the room, Christian explains to Saga that he truly didn't do anything other than touch the cold piece of iron against the baby. The moment she hears those words, Saga suddenly understands something. She bursts into laughter, as if finally piecing everything together. When alone with Kura in the room, Saga says she knows who the child truly is. She recalls her grandmother's warnings about cold iron, having the ability to protect humans from the things living in the forest. Saga starts rummaging through the items she had bought earlier. Finally, she finds a bottle of animal blood and a baby bottle. She pours the blood into the bottle and gives it to Kura. The baby starts drinking it calmly, as if this is exactly what it needs. After finishing the drink, Kura gradually drifts into sleep. Right then, John returns home and calls Saga's name. Hearing her husband's voice, Saga quickly hides the bottle of blood inside the hole in the damaged wood under the rug. The couple then sits down to eat dinner. John proactively offers to help Saga feed the baby, but she refuses and says it's best for her to take care of Kura herself right now. After dinner, an argument breaks out between the two. John knows that Saga still hasn't booked an appointment with the pediatric clinic as the doctor suggested, so he shows his dissatisfaction. Saga, on the other hand, argues that John should trust her more and give her some personal space to take care of their child on her own. Annoyed by those words, John walks away and steps out of the house. Saga intends to run after her husband to talk, but by then it is already too late. Just then, Kura begins to cry again. Already overly stressed, Saga immediately loses her temper. She walks over to her child's bed and starts screaming in the baby's face. Right after, an incredibly loud roar echoes from the forest. Terrified, Saga looks out the window and sees giant tree branches surrounding the house from all sides. But in the blink of an eye, she suddenly wakes up and realizes she is lying on the floor. Saga looks down at her painfully bitten arm and is horrified to discover Kura lying right on the floor in front of her. The baby slowly stands upright on its own 2 feet, despite still being a newborn. Then, Kura starts walking step by step toward his mother. Absolutely terrified, Saga instantly grabs an iron bar and uses it to keep the child away from her. At that exact moment, her mother's phone call comes in. Saga hastily runs to grab the phone, then locks herself in the bathroom. Kura stands outside, continuously banging on the door. Hearing the noise, Saga's mother asks her daughter what is going on. Saga tries to explain that it is her own son, but her voice is filled with panic. She tells her mother she is thinking of doing something wrong before something worse happens to her. In a state of extreme fear, Saga repeatedly demands that Kura stay away from her and leave. Suddenly the scene shifts, and Saga finds herself standing in the middle of a snow-covered forest. From afar, she hears Kura crying, so she follows the sound. Eventually, she discovers the baby sitting on a dead rabbit, sucking blood from its body. Saga is horrified by the sight. When she returns home, Saga meets John. He asks where she has been and demands that she come inside. Saga steps inside and immediately searches for the bottle of blood to feed Kura. But right then, John appears holding that very bottle in his hand. He looks at Saga with deep suspicion and asks how she wants to explain this. Saga says that Kura cannot drink milk while trying to snatch the bottle from her husband's hands. As the two struggle, the bottle suddenly falls to the floor and shatters, splashing blood all over both of them. Furious, John leaves the room to clean himself up. When he returns, he sees Saga, still covered in blood, standing by the crib, continuously rocking it back and forth to soothe their baby. John looks at his wife and tells her she is no longer the person she used to be. He suggests Saga should spend a day away from the house, go down to the city to meet friends, talk to other people, and try to find herself again. During that time, John will take care of Kura himself. Saga eventually agrees. She leaves the house and heads to the city, trying to spend time away from the forest and her current stressful life. While sitting with friends, Saga tries to talk about work and other normal topics, but the people around her seem to care about nothing other than asking how her son is doing. This makes Saga even more annoyed and stressed. Suddenly, Saga hears a baby crying nearby. That sound causes her to start losing her composure. While eating, she feels her skin itching intensely. Her body starts turning red, as if having an abnormal reaction. Her friends worriedly ask if she is having an allergic reaction. Saga merely says she needs to leave. Before leaving, she secretly grabs a piece of meat from the kitchen and hides it in her bag. As soon as she arrives home, Saga immediately snatches Kura from John's arms and carries him up to the room. There, she discovers something bizarre. Her red and itchy patches of skin begin to return to normal the moment she is near the child. Saga understands that her body seems to react to the distance between her and Kura. She places the piece of meat on the floor and gives it to Kura. The next morning, over breakfast, Saga and Taru talk about the tremendous difficulty in taking care of Kura. Meanwhile, Taru's daughter comes over to play with Kura. At first, everything seems normal, but Kura unexpectedly lures the little girl into another room where Saga cannot see them. Not long after, everyone hears the little girl's terrified scream and immediately rushes over to see what happened. Saga hastily pulls Kura away from there, while emitting a strange growl at the baby like an animal protecting its territory. Taru is horrified to find her daughter's finger has been severed. She immediately takes her child to the hospital with John, while angrily blaming Saga for failing to control Kura's behavior. Saga breaks down completely and bursts into tears. Meanwhile, Kura just stands there looking at her. Finally, Saga goes to the damaged wood in the floor, opens the hole, and takes out a piece of meat hidden inside. She gives the piece of meat to Kura to eat. Then, seeing another piece of meat in her hand, Saga hesitates for a moment before bringing it to her mouth and starting to eat the raw meat. From that moment on, Saga and Kura increasingly become like wild animals. Mother and son start playing with each other in a bizarre way, moving, reacting, and making sounds more like animals than humans. Saga seems to have found a special bond with Kura that she cannot find anywhere else. The next day, John enters his son's room. He stops dead in his tracks upon discovering Saga and Kura sleeping and hiding inside the hole beneath the floorboards, like two creatures seeking shelter. That sight leaves John utterly shocked and astounded. At lunchtime, John tries to control Kura to feed the child normal food. Saga instantly lets out a growl at her son, and strangely enough, Kura immediately calms down. John attempts to feed the child mashed food, but Kura spits it straight into his face. When John tries again, the baby starts to cry. Saga immediately stands up, swats the plate away, and says that metal hurts Kura. Saga leaves the room. A while later, she returns with a piece of meat and places it on the table. Kura instantly lunges at it and devours the meat. John is stunned into silence by the scene. He tries to take the meat away from in front of the child, but Saga immediately screams, demanding that he leave Kura alone. After Kura falls asleep, Saga goes to apologize to her husband, but by this time, John is completely filled with despair. He says that he has finally seen Saga's true self and claims that everything happening is her fault. John also says that Saga shouldn't have become a mother in the first place, then calls her a monster. John then declares that he will take Kura away and leave Saga. When he tries to pick the baby up, Saga instantly charges in to stop him. The two struggle fiercely and fall to the floor together. Amidst the chaos, Kura escapes from the room. John and Saga immediately stand up and chase after the child. By now, Saga begins to lose control entirely. She moves and reacts like a wild beast, frantically searching for Kura. When Kura runs back into the room, John and Saga lunge at each other. Neither of them speaks normally anymore, but instead, they begin growling at one another like two beasts fighting over territory. Kura stands by, watching his parents, observing while crying. The child's cries grow louder and louder, and then the most terrifying thing happens. Giant tree branches from outside suddenly crash straight into the house, shattering the walls and making the entire room violently shake. After a moment of chaos, everything finally falls silent. Saga turns to look at John and is struck dead in her tracks upon discovering a massive tree branch has impaled his body. John lies motionless on the floor, his body completely unresponsive. Saga then notices Kura approaching his father's corpse. The child bends down and starts drinking blood from John's body. Seeing this sight, Saga is initially terrified, but then the instinct inside her awakens too. She slowly approaches her husband's corpse and begins eating the meat from his body. At the end of the film, Kura starts heading toward the forest. Saga stands behind, watching her son. Suddenly, she sees a creature shaped like a tree slowly approaching Kura. Right then, Saga realizes the entire surrounding forest begins moving to the sound of her son's shrieks. The tree trunks and branches shake as if the whole forest is answering Kura's call. By this point, Saga finally accepts the truth about Kura. She understands that her son is not a normal child, but a creature with a special connection to the forest. At the same time, Saga also accepts the truth about herself. She realizes that the changes within her, the strange instincts, and the bond with Kura are all a part of her true self that she has been trying to deny all along. And that is exactly how the movie ends. Today's story ends here. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.